Good morning and welcome to day 2 of LinkedIn Solved. Today's session may be a little bit more technical, that we've tried to explain everything in sufficient detail that you don't have to be a techie type person to get it. And we will be covering some hacks and x-rays and alternatives for getting the most out of LinkedIn. So same idea as yesterday, slightly different focus, covering some additional content and going a little deeper on some topics introduced but not explained yesterday. As I mentioned before we started the recording, please use the questions box. So for anyone who joined after that explanation, please note, as with yesterday, or if you didn't attend yesterday, this is your note or notice. We use this questions box. It may look a little different on your screen than mine. This is the presenter view, but you should have something like this. Ignore the one that says chat. Find the one that says questions. That'll send your questions just to me, or comments, or whatever you type in there. If you don't want those read aloud, please let me know when you ask, because I'm going to read them aloud so people can know what I'm answering, unless otherwise. And if you don't want it read aloud, basically save it for later, send it to us in email or through our support form. We are recording this session, of course, and you'll get instructions to access the day 2 materials, just like the ones from day 1, later today. If you didn't receive the instructions for day 1, please reach out, and we'll review those logistics again towards the end of the hour. We ran rather late yesterday, about 40 minutes or so. So thanks again for those who bore with me. I think we produced some good content there, and I think everyone got something out of it. But today, I think we're going to come in right around an hour, so fingers crossed. So today, it looks like a short list, but there's quite a lot of content for most of these. I mentioned yesterday, we were talking about ORs and how important they are, and we talked about using the Boolean workaround to overcome some of the limitations there, but we didn't really talk about how to get what you put into the OR builder, and I wanted to provide some content on that. And then, of course, we have some, sort of a flip side to that, and then some other quick hacks, when including about messaging group members, and then finally a deep dive into X-ray, which comprises the bulk of the end of the session. So for all of those who had questions about X-ray yesterday, they will be answered today. So as you will recall from yesterday, we had a number of limitations we talked about overcoming, and the answer to many of those was X-ray. But for those that it was not, it was using things like ORs to improve precision of searches, avoid some of those interpretations we were talking about yesterday. Also, if you want to implement that, either the wide to narrow or narrow to wide strategies that we discussed yesterday, you will at some point be using some sort of like long Boolean construction. Also helps you incorporate those discoveries from those exploratory research stages we talked about as well. It is possible to do long ORs, of course, on all platforms, but as you'll recall, if you're using the regular kind of LinkedIn people search interface, not Recruiter, not Navigator, you do need to implement the Boolean workaround. We did share a link to the tool for doing so easily yesterday, and there's a link later on in these slides as well, but if you can't find it, let me know. I'm happy to share a link to the sheet. So kind of like the big time saver for working with these larger lists to, perform these searches is going to be using simple scraping tools. You can, and in fact, we have produced an entire multi-hour course on how to do some web scraping and recruiting. However, it is a complex, tricky subject, and it is one you can either use the dead simple basic tools that just work, or you can become a hacker and a programmer and spend a lot of time learning about how the web works and HTML and all sorts of other things. Now, I did that, and I certainly recommend doing that for anyone who's interested and really wants to spend a lot of kind of time and effort into like automated scraping and stuff like that. However, I recognize that most people especially most people working in recruiting and talent probably don't want to do that. And, we'll find it frustrating and perhaps not interesting. So if we're just looking to quickly grab data from the web, we want to rely on very simple, straightforward capture or scraping tools that don't require any kind of hacking, don't require us to look at any HTML, don't require us to really know how they work. They just work. You click a button, you get the data, you're good to go. So this approach, this simple approach, has some limits in that it does not always work. If it does not work, give up. Move on, find a different set of data to capture, or get ready to do some data entry, type stuff up. But for many web pages that contain lists of things like companies or job titles or names, stuff like that, things we might want to capture and use in a long OR string, they are laid out as tables and are thus easily captured with a simple scraping tool. And one of the simplest to use, which I personally recommend because it works on most websites, including Google search results, is one called Instant Data Scraper. There's a link here at the top of this slide, which you'll be able to click to go to the Chrome Web Store page for Instant Data Scraper. We're just going to go there, click the button, install it. And when you install it, you'll see a little Pokeball, a little hard to see in this image. Unfortunately, the parts of the screen that we can zoom in on are not, as easy to see here, but you can actually see this here. I'll pull up my browser live version. So this is the icon for Instant Data Scraper. So when you see that in your extensions bar, you can just click it and it'll go to work. It'll pop up a little window called Instant Data Scraper, and it will tell you what it's going to try to scrape. If it doesn't look like the list you were trying to grab, just click Try Another Table until it looks correct. If it never looks right, then stop. This will not work on this page, and you should try a different page to scrape from instead. That is the best advice I have on scraping and data capture for people who don't want to get under the hood and don't want to learn to code, is just use the simple tools and just give up if they don't work. Because otherwise, it's like a difference between a tool that really helps you and saves you time and opening up a whole new can of worms that'll eat days or weeks of your life. So the trade-off is pretty clear. There's no middle ground in scraping. Simple, fast, seconds or weeks. So do the thing that works in seconds. If it doesn't work, do something else. Move on. Find a different data set to capture. Fortunately, as I said, for things like companies, job titles, names, these lists are very scrapable and are simple, and this tool will generally work. It also helps to capture things like Google search results. So once you get a list, this is just going to save into a CSV or Excel file, which you can then open up or whatever, or you can just copy right off the screen and paste into the Boolean workaround tool to build an or and or not search based on this data. We talked about using that tool and doing the Boolean workaround yesterday, so I won't repeat that here, but day one covers that more extensively. But this is another application of those tools. And here's just one example. Let's say we want to find people who work at Fortune 10 companies. We could take the Fortune 10 list, we could paste it in as an OR string, and this is formatted using the Boolean workaround tool. Put it into the company search, and there we go. Apple is a little tricky here. I mentioned that yesterday, right? There's a lot of companies with Apple in the name, so I probably wouldn't use Apple per se, but for most companies, it's not as much of a concern. Another application, which we can actually probably apply something like Instant Data Scraper, but there are also some email-specific capture tools, and there's also things like pre-compiled lists that we could just download, would be to do the flip side of exploratory research. So exploratory research was a core sourcing skill we introduced yesterday, discussed. That's really where we fill in the blanks in our knowledge to gain kind of the basis of understanding that we need to inform what we search for. And cross-referencing takes a different approach. When we do exploratory research, we basically don't know much or don't know anything. And we have a vague idea of what we don't know, but we're going out to learn, things. When we cross-reference, we know what we don't know, and we know what we know, and we're using what we know to find the thing that we don't know. And in this case, what we know is an email address, and perhaps some other data. And what we don't know is a LinkedIn profile. So when we do sourcing outside of LinkedIn, which is, by the way, a very much recommended practice, we have some courses on that as well, and we do it frequently in our own sourcing practice, we will still come back to LinkedIn because LinkedIn, profile URLs are an easy thing to include in, say, like a spreadsheet. If you're sending someone a list of possible candidates, they're a good foundation. And we know most of our clients work in Recruiter, so if we could send them LinkedIn profile URLs, that lets them pull those people back into their LinkedIn Recruiter interface, lets them add them to projects and lists and things like that. So there's value in having the URL, even if you have like a resume or a complete profile of the person on another site. It's still sometimes useful to have the LinkedIn profile. So this is how to essentially go from, email to profile, but also how to do it in bulk, hundreds or even thousands at a time, which is a huge time saver when you're working with long lists. And whether those long lists are for yourself as a starting point for your own kind of sourcing recruiting workflow, or whether they're your work product, your output as a sourcer who may do more lead gen type or list gen type activities, which I often do. So there's like a lot of cases in sourcing where we may want to do this. We can collect a list of emails. We can maybe even generate a list of emails that are potential guesses at the correct email for a single person. We can import either list and see which ones hit on LinkedIn profiles. And, there's a lot of different kind of ways we can gain value from this technique. So how do we do this in practice? Step 0 is going to be to set the table, right? If you're importing data multiple times into LinkedIn, it's going to get a little messy. It's going to be a little hard to keep it straight. It's going to be hard to know which imported data set yielded which results. So the best practice to keep it simple, keep it clean, is to delete your last project before you start your new one. So step 0, set the table, clean it out. We've included the links to the relevant sections here, but essentially when you go into your, LinkedIn network, and just kind of real quick show you where that goes. We're talking about this page here. So you're going to go and clear this out. But we have the links to these relevant pages in the slides, so you can go back and do this more easily. Right. Having cleared it out, of course, we need something else to put in. And the way we're going to do that is by searching or exploring. And there's a number of different approaches you can use to generate lists. You probably don't want any old email addresses, right? It doesn't do you much good to know that, Silver Surfer at AOL.com, what that profile is, if that person isn't an employable person for your company, right? It is not a potential candidate. A random email off the web doesn't help you. So you want targeted emails. You want emails for people who you know are potentially valuable contacts. You could generate those emails by finding lists of professionals that include their emails. I've included a sample search here, which will find Excel files that include at least 3 email addresses, one from each of these 3 domains, probably many more, and the words nurse, case manager. Ideally, I'll be finding a list of nursing or allied health professionals, including at least one nurse case manager or a nurse and a case manager. Either way, probably the right type of list if I find one. And there are several results for this search. I'll turn it, so when you get a list from Excel, you can just download it, go in, copy the email column, boom, good to go. You can also find lists of like web pages. You can also find web pages rather that include lists of people along with their email addresses. One of the simplest way to do that is to use those email emoji icons. Here, we're not X-raying LinkedIn for emoji. We're just searching the web for emoji. But if you combine that with something like a phrase that's likely to appear on a staff listing page on a website, that's going to work quite effectively. And you can just see an example of that second one here. And, here's McClure Engineering. Where's McClure Engineering? I don't know. But if you're looking for, these people, their emails are here. And I'm jumping ahead on my slides a little bit, but, there are tools we can use to, capture emails as we go. This one has quite a few emails. There's some other pages we're going to see here that have them. I'm just doing this so I can generate some emails for the capture so that I can demo that when we get to the slide. But essentially, like anytime you get to one of these pages that's got like lists of people and their emails and stuff, you can be collecting them like in real time, so it's kind of neat. And as long as you add some additional stuff to this search, I don't know, maybe we want landscape architects. Remember we had that example yesterday? Just kind of like a fun example. Not that I hire a lot or source for a lot of them, but and you can see it's not the most precise search in the world. We get some false positives, but we're still getting like a lot of pages that include lists of emails as we do this. So it's a search approach we can use. And, say we pull a staff listing from a company, we can now cross-reference the entire staff list against LinkedIn in real time. And that's going to like give us the capability within LinkedIn to then message them directly, in many cases for free, or to invite them to connect quite easily. There's a lot of potential outcomes of doing it. So there's like other types of web pages as well. We look at nonprofits, volunteer organizations. I've imported PTA lists because I knew that my target candidate was on the PTA board in the town. There's all kinds of applications. You can also be collecting individual emails from social profiles and stuff, or like GitHub using an email capture tool. And the one that I kind of briefly was hovering over in my search there was called Email Extractor. This is actually a tool that our company, Brain Game Recruiting, provides for free. It's just a Google Chrome extension. It's very simple. It's free. It works really well. It grabs emails from any web page you are visiting. If you set the settings to run in the background and collect emails from all the pages I visit, which I recommend doing, you can just turn it on and let it go. And then when you're done collecting, turn it off and capture those emails back to your dashboard, to your clipboard rather, from whence you can paste into Excel or the Boolean Builder tool or whatever you like. I don't know why you do a Boolean search for email addresses. It wouldn't work well on LinkedIn, but you could, I guess. That's my point. This would be that GitHub example, right? GitHub searches reveal emails when they're public for users, and you can just click next, 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 and go to each page, capture all of them, and you know that this whole list of people, even though you're only capturing the email addresses, you know all of them, know PHP, and live in Chicago. So when you go back to like LinkedIn and do an import of these emails, you know that anyone who hits, everybody in that group is going to be a Chicago-based developer with PHP experience. And if that's what you're looking for, you now have a very actionable list right in your imported contacts screen. When you do the import, now that you've captured these emails, however you've done it, whether you downloaded a list or you built a list with a capture tool, scraped it, whatever, now to import it, you want to go and create a CSV file. You just go into Excel, save this CSV. You need to have these 3 column headers. You can write first name out, like first space name, last space name, but it's actually simpler and easier just to do first, last, email, exactly as you see here in bold. Then the first name field has to have something in it, but it does not have to be, and we recommend that you don't make it the person's actual name. I prefer to do things like data about what my project is, like the project I'm sourcing for and the date of the search. This actually lets me do multiple imports without having to worry about knowing which import, which result came from. But, it's up to you what you put here. It could be junk, it could be anything. Very frequently, like when Irina does this, she'll put A in the first name column and B in the last name column. It's just A and B all the way down, which looks messy for all the unmatched profiles, but for people who match, you'll see it doesn't matter. So then you'll upload this file. You used to be able to upload directly, and some people are still able to do so, but most people see that the upload option is gone. However, if you can't upload your file directly, you can still do a little workaround. And if you need to do the workaround, just pick your email, webmail provider of choice, be it Gmail, Outlook, what have you. Import your contacts to the third-party service first, upload the file to any of these, and then import your contacts, sync your contacts over from this service. I have a Outlook.com account I use strictly for this purpose. I just go in, delete my contacts, upload the new contacts, and sync them over. Whether you upload or sync, the result is the same. And you'll see in real time the matches for the people that you've synced over who have LinkedIn profiles. You get a screen where you're actually able to quickly invite them or invite them to connect if you're not already. And for those who are not matched, there's another screen that shows you these are all the emails that didn't match profiles. You can ignore that because you can see the same results in the saved contact screen when you go back to it. This list was all first name John, last name Smith. So you'll see Smith coming up a lot for the unmatched profile. But for matched profiles, you actually see the full name and stuff because it pulls it from the linked profile here. You can't really, if you put everyone's like first and last name is the same thing, you cannot sort by last name because this sort actually works based on the imported data, not the displayed data. Same thing with search. But if you do the thing where you identify your list, like by list type and date, when you do the import, you can use the search, because then everyone has a slightly different first and last name, and you could search for everyone you imported today versus yesterday. So, different strategies. I like to do it that way. Some people just like to clear it out and start fresh every time. As long as you're organized about it, there are ways to make it work in either direction. But once you get here, you are good to go. You can now identify the emails, right? So there are really, really large lists you're able to import using this method. We have tested in real time maybe thousands, not tens of thousands, but thousands. Certainly hundreds is easy. Compare that to the only other LinkedIn import tool that really exists, which is the LinkedIn Recruiter project import, which caps you at what, 200 at a time? Try doing 5,000 people 200 at a time. And also, I don't know if you've ever tried one of those sorts of things or moving a lot of people into one of those projects, but it breaks a lot. And when it breaks, sometimes it gets stuck for hours or days, and there's no way to unstick it. You just got to wait or sometimes start a new project over. It's messy. So being able to do this in bulk with large amounts of people is quite powerful. This is just an example of that alternative use case. Instead of a list of different people, if you're trying to verify or guess an email for someone, you could do, well, maybe 8,000 variations on the email address at a time. I used to say there were these tools that were very popular about 10 years ago, maybe, or just gaining some popularity then, called, I think most people called them like email permutators. They would generate, based on certain inputs, a list of potential email addresses for a given person, generating 50 or 100 or even thousands of variations at a time. There used to not be a way to validate those guesses because you would have to manually check each email, but you could actually now use one of those permutators to generate hundreds or even thousands of variants on an email address for someone and check to see which one is actually attached to their LinkedIn profile. And you can do it quite quickly with this method. So, again, quite useful. All right. Any questions on the hack, the method, the applications, why you'd use it, how you'd use it, etc.? Or actually, for that matter, the ORS? Curious, because I know I moved a little quick there. I'm conscious of the time, but I want to give people an opportunity to ask some questions. So if you have one, please do share. If you're quiet because you're furiously scribbling notes, that's cool too. If you're quiet because you're bored, let me know. I could do something maybe more exciting. But just like to check in every so often. I'll keep an eye on that questions box in case anyone does have any. So this one's quick and easy. Well, it's a little complicated to do, but it's pretty easy. It's only a few slides. There's no real way when you go to LinkedIn to see your members, and I mentioned this yesterday, who are just in your groups, right? We can search, we can go into a group that we are a member of, and we could see, right, the members. So if I go to like this group, even if I'm not an administrator, I can go to this screen and see members. Now, as an admin, I can see a lot more, but you can still see, right? But there's no real way to search across all your groups for all the people who are members of all your groups. And the neat thing about group members is you can message them, and it was free and unlimited, and then that got popular. And LinkedIn decided, oh no, people might be sending free messages instead of buying more email credits, so we're going to take it away and put a limit on it. People are spamming, I think was their justification, but it was a revenue thing. Well, almost every LinkedIn decision is a misguided revenue-oriented decision at the end of the day, at least in my experience. So when you but then ultimately, I guess it fell out of favor, possibly because they ultimately sort of destroyed the value of groups entirely. They've taken that limit back away, and it may come back, it may go away again, but for now it's unlimited. You can message as many group members as you like. And the downside to that is there's no way to tell who on LinkedIn is a member of your group, except this hack works, right? You can take this method that we're describing here, and we have some detailed sort of technical explanation here for those who are interested, but the simple way to think about it is more like this. Go and set your search up. Input all the things you want in your search because you won't be able to change the search once you do the hack. Think of it as like a hack to apply a final filter to your search. So you go, you set up your search, you put in your keywords, your titles, your everything, right? Do it all. Get it exactly how you want it, except for this filter. Then take that URL, copy it back out, and apply the hack. Because as you'll see, once you apply the hack, it kind of breaks the rest of the filters. They just disappear. But the search is still yeah, You know, it's funny because I did this right before. Oh, I see why. It's not. I'm going to see if that continues to work. There we go. So it's yeah. Sorry, I tested this link right before class and it worked, but I might have messed it up when I reformatted the slide. So I'll double check the link for you before I publish the slides later. But you can see all of the search results are members of my groups. I am a member of 50 groups and I have a lot of connections. So, you know, there's quite a few. The downside to this is going to be that you do have to take some extra steps to message them. Now that you can filter your search down to just people who are your group members, the downside to hacks is that sometimes there we go. I had to refresh the page to make this work, but once you do this, once you kind of like apply it and get it working, sometimes you'll have to refresh the screen or what have you. You'll be able to click into any of these results, view the mutual group, go to the LinkedIn, go to the LinkedIn group that you're a member of. And actually, I've got a diagram for this, which useful for reference. But the hack is really as simple as do your search, copy the URL, and then stick this highlighted yellow part, just stick it on the end. So you can actually, this might be actually the better way to demonstrate this. This is the piece that's highlighted in yellow. So I can just take it and stick it at the end here. Yeah, same result. Okay, cool. So at any rate, apply the hack, just paste it at the end, you're good to go. All the results. We go from a search that includes anyone who matches your criteria down to a search that just includes people in your network. There's a few clicks. We described the process verbally here, but the visual diagram, I think, is a little bit easier to follow. You take your search, click on the person's profile, go to the mutual groups under highlights, go to this pop-up that comes up, click on the group, show all, type in the name, click message, send. Looks a little complicated, but it's free and unlimited, so, I mean, you know, that's the trade-off. A little more work for a little less money. There was a question. Your page shared search using Sales Navigator. Can you use this? Oh, no. So this page here, this is just a prompt. If you have a Recruiter or Sales Navigator account, when you use regular LinkedIn, it prompts you to go use that instead. And it just copies your criteria over. So I guess if you mean the question is, can you copy this search into Navigator or Lite? Yes. And actually, it looks like we can apply the group members hack in Sales Navigator, even though that's. Okay. It is a filter you get on. No, it looks like there is a group members filter here now, which is neat. Actually, haven't. Cool. That is neat. So, actually, correction to a previous statement. The other alternative is buy Sales Navigator and use this filter. So, you know, yeah, cool. No, it means you don't have to have Sales Navigator to do this search. This is a search that works on LinkedIn, regular LinkedIn. just here, this screen right here. Everyone has this screen. This is what this hack works for. If you have Recruiter or you have Navigator, you can do different things in Navigator, in Recruiter. They are three completely separate, unrelated platforms that work on top of the same data set. So you have giant database, all the data linkedin.com, and you have three completely different search applications that sit on top of it. They don't talk to each other. They're not related in any way. They function in almost completely different ways. They were designed by the same people, so they have a lot of the same philosophy and limitations, but they are, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, it's like a totally different site, even though it still says linkedin.com up here, separate thing. LinkedIn Recruiter, it doesn't matter which version. RPS, Lite, Corporate, doesn't matter. Recruiter, bucket 1, Sales Navigator, bucket 2, regular LinkedIn, bucket 3. Not the same things at all. They just work different. So do the hack on the place where it works, right? This hack works on here. It doesn't matter your other accounts. They're not relevant. They don't factor in, right? Hopefully that kind of helps make it clear, because I know we get a bunch of questions about this one, and it's, it's hard, right? Because they're all called like LinkedIn this, LinkedIn that. So when you say LinkedIn, what do you mean? Well, it is tricky with the language. It's a little ambiguous. So just to be very clear, 3 separate products. If we're talking about a hack for LinkedIn, we mean LinkedIn. If we're talking about a hack for Sales Navigator, we mean Sales Navigator. If we're talking about a hack for Recruiter, we mean Recruiter. That's kind of the only way I can think to explain it, unfortunately. All right, and this then becomes the workflow for group members, and that's that hack. So finally, we have our X-rays, and this is going to take up the remainder of the course, or the remainder of today's session is going to be X-ray, X-ray, X-ray. We did a brief intro to X-ray yesterday. We talked and demonstrated solving certain limitations of LinkedIn using this. For example, avoiding interpretations of our search, avoiding incomplete indexing also. In addition, we talked about there being some things you can't search for, and another reminder of what some of those things are. There are whole sections of the profile you can't search for on LinkedIn, some of which you can't even search for on Recruiter. And as a result, we do need to X-ray to find certain things on LinkedIn, no matter what level of account we have. Before I get into some of these examples and discuss some of them, it's going to be kind of important for everyone to be on the same page. So this is a quick refresher, not going to go into a lot of detail here. You can refer back to this later. But the site operator just limits the results on Google to come from a particular like website or domain, directory, what have you. There's a lot of flexibility and interesting applications of this, which we won't get into all of today. We're only going to talk about the ones relevant to LinkedIn. And here, that means we're looking at things like these 3 examples. I don't do a lot of work using country subdomains on LinkedIn. There is value to the approach. It's just rare in my own practice. But this template site, linkedin.com/in, is going to be your workhorse for LinkedIn profiles. So there are some challenges when we work with LinkedIn X-ray. The 2 main ones are going to be, 1, sometimes there's data about more than one person on the same page. So which person's data is causing the result? Is it the person whose profile comes up in the search result, or is it somebody displayed in the sidebar over here? Generally speaking, this can be kind of worked around. It's just something we need to know happens and not be too frustrated by when it comes up. If we find that our results have just far too many false positives to be useful, and my metric for that is if more than half the results are false positives or not correct for what we searched for, then we need to make a change. But I'll accept in my results up to about half being false positives, so long as the rest are good. Your tolerance may be different, but realistically, I think you'll need to accept at least 20 to 30% false positive rates in order to be productive on Google. If you can't handle that, I don't know what to say, because it's just kind of a thing that happens. The narrower your search, the less likely this is to occur. The broader your search, the more likely it is to occur. The second challenge to X-ray is that, it's not like LinkedIn where we have a bunch of little boxes that let us specify, okay, search for this keyword, but only in the title. Search for this keyword, but only in the location. Search for this keyword, but only in the company name. No, we can't do that really on Google. On Google, it's a full page text search. So when we search, we have to keep that in mind. And there are ways that we can target certain parts of the page or fields, but we have to work at it. It's a little trickier, and we'll talk about how to do that as we go here. But just keep those in mind. Those are the major challenges when it comes to X-ray. Of course, there's other odds and ends, like pages aren't always re-indexed in real time. So if you change your profile today, it might be a week before that change is reflected on the Google results, things like that. Sometimes things get updated faster than others. So odds and ends, but these are the two big ones. So again, just as a reminder, we're talking about site linkedin.com/in. And then the most basic, most common X-rays that we're going to be doing are probably going to be searching for people who work with particular titles or at particular companies, right? We just see this being the most common usage of the method of the X-ray searches. And here's an example of doing so for people with a title that has Java in it who work at Google and work in San Francisco. And you can see it fairly accurate. Even though we can't specify job titles, we can specify web page titles. And just as a happy coincidence, LinkedIn puts your job title in the web page title for your profile. So we can search for it quite effectively. Some additional examples here, right? Job title, company, and also things like post-nominal letters. Remember, we talked yesterday about how on LinkedIn we can overcome hidden profile issues by searching for things that are included in the last name that are not necessarily the name. Post-nominal letters, also pronouns, sometimes included as part of the last name. We can search for those things quite easily through Google as well. So the main components of the page title, the searchable page title for a LinkedIn profile when you Google, are going to be name, including all the other things people stick in the name field, plus current title, plus current company. If someone is not currently employed, does not list a current job on their profile, things get a little weird. It'll start then to prefer school if there is a school listed on the profile, and if there's no current company and there's no school, then it may list location or it may throw something random in there. But that's how those titles get constructed. But most people have a current position and thus are fairly straightforwardly searched. When we search on Google, what we want to always be thinking about, and this is especially important when we're doing Google searches because we can't target fields per se. We can only look for words as they appear, wherever they appear on the page. If we say things the way they are likely to be written, then we will have better success. And chief among those would be things like the automated headers that appear on profiles, right? So here's a search where we're looking, and we saw recommendations given search yesterday as well. Oh, come on. No, good. All right. I'm trying to figure out why this link. Yeah, weird link there. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. It was just not working properly. But we have the search, and we did this one with she's yesterday. We talked about. What I'm actually going to do is repeat this in an incognito window so you can see how this appears to Google. And every once in a while, if you do a lot of these, you have to do these like I don't know. This looks like it's right side up. Okay, good job. All these little things to avoid scraping and blah, blah, blah. But we can see that there are headers, right? We can search for these. So recommendations received, boom. We can search for these headers as well. We can't do this on LinkedIn. We can on Google because as far as Google's concerned, this is all just text. So that's what we mean in part by natural language, though there are other ramifications as well. Right. Here's a, no current job search, not present, because the word present appears next to the current job, length of time in role. We can do things like search for public emails, right? By guessing the most, searching for the most common domains. We can also search for things like email me at, with a little asterisk afterwards. Little ways to search for emails that are present. By the way, you can use Instant Data Scraper to capture these results, which will give you the profile URL, name, title, company, and email, and possibly other details from the profile. Boom, in 3 columns. That's not a bad way to collect some records, right, as we go. We can find people based on their credentials. So if we search, right, verified achievement, there is a website specifically that people use to share these verified achievements, right, on Google, if you show me captchas. The way this is working, and I'm not sure if it'll appear when I log in, so I may take this back to the incognito browser as well. I'm doing the incognito because I'm logged into LinkedIn and I'm showing examples on LinkedIn, but I'm also trying to show. Oh, I closed it. Okay, that's why I can't find it. So when we do this, I must be doing this too much because I'm getting these prompts very rapidly now. I'm typically only get these a couple times a day, but now I'm getting them every time. So it's not fun. But it might be because I closed the window earlier. So you can see, right, the verified achievement. This is actually pulling from the public activity section. These are posts on LinkedIn, but they include what they're about. So when you go and look at activity, right, verified achievements, this is what that post actually might be, right? So you could see people who share this type of activity on their profile that can get rolled up into their public profile. And when you could, kind of look at these, you don't necessarily want liked by, in this case, we want people who have these credentials, not people who are congratulating their coworkers who got them. But the principle is the same. So Heinrich was a bad example, but this is what you're looking for with this type of search. And the reason for that is that this website that people use to post posts like this, Credly is what it's now called. It used to be a different name on this website. But every time you go to Credly and enter a credential and share it to LinkedIn, it generates a post that looks like this, and the wording is so standardized and obvious that we can X-ray for it and find nearly all of them. So that's kind of neat to be able to do. All kinds of different certifications and credentials can be searched in this way. We talked about recommendations. We can search for accomplishments, honors, and awards. Any one of those little header sections on the profile, we can search for them. And so it becomes very easy for us then to search and identify all of these kind of interesting things on people's profiles. We just look for them. We call them. We name them exactly as they're written, and that's it. Another neat option, unfortunately, this is formatted a little hard to read here, but I wanted to make sure we included the example. But when you click it, you'll be able to see there's this option that we don't have on LinkedIn. You can now on your LinkedIn profile include things like a course you took and the grades you got, but you can't search for them. Even though you can put them on your profile, no one can search for them. You can't show me, people with a GPA of 4 or better, even though someone can put that information on their profile. They can put their GPA there, but there's no way to search for it. So we can actually Google for it because it's visible on the profile. It's visible on the public profile that Google sees. We can search for it and find it. So if you wanted, say, iOS developers with first class honors, which would be predominantly in the UK because that's where they would use that terminology, works incredibly well. This was the solution to a sourcing project we did for a client who does a lot of hiring of iOS developers in and around Europe. And we came up with this technique to be able to find them because they only wanted to see profiles of people with strong academic records. And since we were using LinkedIn, we came up with a way to do that. Yeah, there was a comment. If you look how honors is written, we spell it the UK way. I think. The comment was in Canada the spelling is also OURS. I wasn't actually thinking of the spelling there, just the actual statement of I graduated first class honors. Right. This is more of like a UK educational system specific thing. It's not necessarily going to be only in the UK, but that model is where it comes from. And being a, former, well, I actually have no clue really how the whole Commonwealth thing works, but as a kind of, as one time at least subjects of the Queen or King now, I suppose, a lot of that gets inherited from that system. But this is also specifying the UK as the site prefix, but that's kind of where we came from. But if you were searching for a US English flavored place, so any place that uses US English, that is a valid comment, right? Where we want to say ONOR. So use the, again, that ties back to natural language. Use the spelling that's relevant to the people you want to find. And phrasing too. There's a neat difference between UK, US English in that in the US, the style, we would say, call me at my number, right? And in the UK, you will see more frequently, call me on my number, on at. Different word choice just based on regionalism. So yeah, natural language has many permutations and interesting things. Spelling is one, phrasing is another. Word choice. So all things to be cognizant of when you search. And the same applies for other languages as well if you're searching in them, which you can do on Google. So, and there's just like a lot of examples, right? Here's a way to search for people who have specifically been at a company for 4 years. It's hard to search by years in a current role on LinkedIn. Even in Recruiter, that nominally gives you the option to do this, and Sales Navigator also nominally gives you the option to do this. They don't work terribly well for a lot of reasons, but we can actually search accurately for this using an X-ray search. Another example would be the graphic hack. So just as a general web thing, most images on the web are accompanied by what's called alternative or alt text that is not displayed to you unless you are using like a screen reader or visual assistive device. It's there so that people who can't see the image can at least know what the image was supposed to show. And when you load up a web page in your browser, generally speaking, that text will not be displayed if the image is displayed. If the image is not displayed, it shows the text instead, hence alternative text. That is searchable text in many cases. It is indexed by Google because it is text that is on the page. So when we search on LinkedIn, LinkedIn always adds the word graphic to the end of that alternative text. 2 years ago, when we first started noticing this hack, the alternative text was structured differently. It used to be image for whatever it was. Now it's whatever it is, ending in graphic. A slight change in the way they've generated this text, but the same principle applies. Since we know this to be true, we can search for those logos or those images to be on the site as long as we include graphic at the end. So if we want to find pages that have the IBM company logo on them, we say IBM graphic. And that's mostly going to show up on people's profiles, right? Since we're searching LinkedIn public profiles, where do those company logos appear? In the experience section. So that's going to be someone who has prior IBM experience. Same thing. Here we add minus in title IBM, meaning we exclude people whose current employer is IBM, but still have the IBM graphic on their page, which means a former employee. And there's many, many more examples here. Another kind of fun thing we can do while X-raying is we can actually do search by image, like reverse image search with the combination of an X-ray. So we can go do a reverse image search and then add the X-ray string to the search after the fact to limit the results to LinkedIn after we've searched for it. So you go to Google, you go image search, search from an image, you upload the logo for the credential you're searching for, and then you add, pardon me, then you add your site linkedin.com to filter the results down to just pages on LinkedIn that contain this image. If you want to figure out how to know which images are being used on LinkedIn, well, we can also X-ray LinkedIn to find images by, pardon me one second. Dry throat. Talking too much. We get these as well, right? So we can find these images and then go back and reverse search them. Another fun X-ray idea, just for funsies, right? Find people who have this phrase on their profile. There's actually more than you'd think, right? I accept direct messages and business inquiries by anyone on LinkedIn for free, even if we're not connected. All those people who use the open profile messaging so that anyone can message them are found that way. There are two additional concepts I want to talk about, and I am going to run over, unfortunately, by a couple of minutes. One is going to be the around operator, and the other is the in-anchor operator. The details of how they work, we do include verbiage to that here, but I think the examples, once again, will be a little bit more instructive before kind of like reading all this stuff off. But for reference, we include them here. Essentially, the around operator looks for instances where one word appears within this number. So you don't actually put the letter N. It's going to be a number, N for number, like a mathematic shorthand, right? Around 2 means Google appears within 2 words in either direction of one pager. Or director appears either after engineering or before 1 or 2 words out. Some examples here. This is useful. It's a proximity operator. It lets us search for words a specified distance apart. And again, thinking about natural language and how things are written, that becomes quite powerful. Okay, I did hit time. Let me quickly... No, in the interest of time, I'm going to actually fast forward. Sorry about the whiplash there. For those who absolutely have to go, apologies for putting you through this once again, but I do want to make sure we include this stuff. And it's kind of, once again, first presentation of a new deck. Always got to find the pacing for it, right? But if you do have to go absolutely right now, as with yesterday, we will be emailing you an email quite like this, which will be going to the email used to register for today. If you didn't get yesterday's or you don't get today's, please reach out. We are happy to help. You can submit your request through the support form on our site or via help@sourcingcertification.com. And of course, to our subscribers, it will be appearing in Canvas within a few hours. Go check there instead. That being said, if you do have to go, take care. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for coming. And please do submit any questions that occur to you for the next 30 days or so through the support form. We're happy to help. Didn't quite understand something we said. Wanted to see if you can apply a technique in a different way than we demonstrated. All those things are included. Just reach out. We're happy to help. All right, you've also got an idea of how much is left. So I think maybe we really can knock this out in about 10 minutes for those who can stick around. So that's how the around operator works. So where we pair it with the LinkedIn X-ray, we can say things like, um, GPA around to 4.0. We'll find either GPA 4.0 or 4.0 GPA or GPA 3.49 out of 4. This is really useful in that grade search example we talked about, right, as an application. We can search for, say, people who were the CFO of a company in the past, but not currently. I'm sure we can think of applications for that. Locations are also quite powerful, and you actually saw an example of this in yesterday's slides as well. I think I lifted this specific example. I actually looked, and we have an example here that I may change this up before publishing these for you later today, because I think the Facebook office there either changed names or moved, and as a result, we don't find many results for Meta like engineering staff in Chicago now when we do this result, but the technique works. So if you take the company out, you'll find a ton of people, and I'll probably do that. But essentially, this works quite well. So this search targets member locations, and it works. No, this one works. I think it's the other one that doesn't. And the reason it works, and I have to show you this in the incognito screen again, because you need to see it how Google sees it. All right, come on. There we go. So here's a Meta software engineer, blah, 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 public profile. So when we do this one, this around connections, around 5, greater Chicago area, that's a member location target. And the reason it works is connections, greater Chicago area. There's some variation into how this text appears. Oh, there's some variation rather into how this text appears. For example, followers isn't always present. So we can't say around 2, right, area 267 connections. That would be within 2, but sometimes this stuff is there. So we say around 5, and that accounts for all the different variations. But there's no other place that the place name can appear within 5 words. No other 5-word, between connections and location in the profile. So we know that if we get a hit, it is the correct place name. The alternative to that is actually searching for locations under experience, which aren't always present, but where they are present, we can search for them quite effectively by looking for the places where by looking for rather the name of the company with the work location within a certain distance. So another application, years at a company, and we can actually use the number range operator to search for people with a range of experience. Again, the word present, if we look at that, appears only with the current profile. To present, only active or currently open jobs have present. So if we search for around present, and here's one that does include the location of the work, then we can actually get this text next to present means it's the current job's amount of time. So we have this precision that's not actually possible on LinkedIn, but as you're able to see now, it's quite possible with Google X-ray of LinkedIn. There we go. Sorry, my slide advancement bounced around a little bit there. The final kind of variation here is to introduce the in-anchor operator, which is very poorly understood, I found. Many people are aware of the idea of proximity searches, whether or not they use the around operator on Google frequently. It's a little easy to explain, but in-anchor is tricky because it does something a little weird. It does not search pages. It searches external links back to pages. And more strangely still, it searches the text that sits on top of the link. So, on a web page, you can have a link that's just a link, or you can have, say, click here. And then when you click on click here, it's a link. So what InAnchor does is it searches for all the pages that have links to a page and certain words in that text. So those words, click here, we can't search what site is linking to a page, but we can search for all the pages that use the words click here when they linked to a page. It's sort of like weird, it's reverse, and it's hard to troubleshoot sometimes because there's no way to reverse it directly. So it is a tricky one. It requires a little bit of practice to understand. But when you do your InAnchor searches or when you see the next set of examples, I think it'll become clearer. So in here, what we're doing is saying on LinkedIn, or rather for LinkedIn, the application of this, I should say, is that LinkedIn has these directory pages, and they've had them forever. If you want to take a look at one, you have to be logged out, because if you're logged in, it'll redirect you to a search instead. But these directory pages contain lists of people, and they all have certain basic information. It can include work experience, it can include educational experience. Generally speaking, it'll include the current company, current and most recent education, the current location, and the headline, as well as the name. There's potentially other information, but these are the consistent fields we always see. So if we say InAnchor, what it's going to do is look at this text here, each block of this text, to see if those keywords appear. Because underneath each of these little blocks of text is a link. That link goes to this person's profile. So while there may be other pages on the web that link to this person's profile, we know for sure that this page links to that profile with certain standardized structured terms that we can search for. As a result of that, when we search for this anchor text within these public directory pages, or from these public directory pages, we know what to expect, we know how to structure these searches, and we can use the fact that these exist to find profiles we might otherwise miss. So, just for example, headlines. These profile headlines is not what is in the title of a web page. The web page title does not include a headline. It includes current job title, current company. And on LinkedIn, we can search profile headlines with a straight up text search, but we can't search them. We can't target them. And the reason profile headlines are interesting to search on is that we can, when we personalize our headline, and granted, a small percentage of users do. I do, Arena does, many people do who are active on LinkedIn. Many people who are less active on LinkedIn don't do this and use the standard current title at company format. But for those who do personalize, I know a lot of recruiters will personalize their headline to be something like, hey, I'm recruiting for this, hiring for that. Come join me at that. Like salespeople at a company will like personalize them as well. Those personalized headlines can provide a lot of useful information or actionable information, but there's no way to search them. Just to search for people who are currently hiring, right? Like who have like hiring for in their profile. We don't have a way to search for that per se on LinkedIn, but we can via X-Ray, and we can do so quite accurately using InAnchor, because that public this directory card includes the headline right here. It does not include the current job title, but we have other ways to search for current job title. So that's what this looks like when we search for InAnchor. Because this link contains this information, we can find with InAnchor this page among our results. So again, when we do this search, we're excluding people who have healthcare in the title, but we are including healthcare in the in anchor. And as a result, we're finding pages that don't have healthcare in the title, not the current job per se, but do have it in their headline. So this would actually exclude current job as well as current title. And this includes headline. Since healthcare is not likely to appear as the name or the location, the only remaining place for healthcare to appear is in the headline, and thus we can be certain that this is a headline hit for healthcare. And we can also do things like current location. We had an example with around, but this is potentially a little bit easier depending on the types of search you're running. A little less logically complex. We know that the exact location is going to appear in the anchor, and we can vary that slightly. We can use the city-state format, which some profiles use. We can use the region format, which some use, and we can use the metro region, which other profiles will use. You do kind of need to have a sense for how place names are written on LinkedIn. Again, natural language, things as they appear, but those are one, searchable, and you can find lists of place names for LinkedIn, or you can go view a few profiles on LinkedIn and see what place names they use to pull those out and use in your searches. Again, you'll see the same principle applies outside of the US. So any location, they may have slightly different place name formats, but once you know them, you can apply them. It is worth trying for non-English dominant countries, even countries where English is quite well spoken for business, but where it's not the primary national language. It is sometimes useful to search for the place name in the local language, because sometimes when people's profile is set to be in, French or whatever, or in Dutch, for example, here, you're going to see that the place names are written in that language. And as a result, we need to search for them to find them. If I search for Netherlands, but Nederland is what is actually on the profile, then Netherlands isn't going to find it. So I do need to be cognizant of that. Most recent school, again, is what's listed in that little title card, those little boxes when we started this. In Anchor, explanation. So in this example, we can see most recent school, right? In Anchor, Oxford. But we exclude Oxford from the title. So we're excluding people who have Oxford as their current title or company. And we're only finding then people who have Oxford. Now, this can actually potentially include false positives. For example, if you lived in a town called, Oxford, New Mexico, then you might find some people from Oxford, New Mexico who happen to be string theory PhDs. It's just not likely to happen very often. So, but grain of salt. When you do these searches, false positives do occur. Just be cognizant of that and, ignore them and move on to the correct results. Latest company, same thing. We can also do that with an in title, but we just wanted to demonstrate that this is possible. Another neat thing we can do is in Anchor will show the most recent company. So when we go back to this box, this is the most recent school and the most recent company, right? Not necessarily the current company, the most recent company, most recent school. So if you have changed jobs recently, or if you've been, if you've been let go recently, if you've been laid off, your title soon enough will update, and it will, the page title will no longer include a current company because you're not there. However, the in anchor will find the page because, most recent, not necessarily current. Alternatively, those directories update slowly, slower than the Google index for public profiles. So here you can find very recent changes where the directory page still points here with the old company, but the new company is actually present in the page title. And thus we're seeing people who've potentially moved. Same idea here. Remember I talked about how the page title changes depending on whether you have a current job. Sometimes it lists school, sometimes it lists location. We could see these examples here. All right. They talked about finding people who are currently hiring managers or recruiters. But if you wanted to really find hiring managers, you would add something like minus recruiter or something, right? Or like in title manager or in title director or something, which would make it more likely to be an actual functional hiring manager versus a recruiter. But other examples of how to do this. This is useful if you're exploring a company, like building an org chart, for example. It could also be useful if you're prospecting for business or just want to learn about the competition for whatever reason. So there's a lot of applications for this, regardless of the type of recruiting, in-house, third party, etc., that you do. Right? Better than yesterday, anyway. A little faster. So I do want to. I know I went pretty fast and covered a lot. I want to make sure I provide an opportunity to answer questions, but keep in mind we have run over and only have a few minutes to really do so. So any questions about anything covered today that can be answered in, say, the next 5 minutes? Shoot. I didn't see a lot of inline questions today. Oh, there was a question, and I apologize. I missed it when it came up. About the... let's see if we can find the slide that this was on. Probably in here somewhere. Yeah, it would have been in the example for the. It was like one of the credential examples. It was about the. It was like about a registered trademark, and I was just trying to find which slide it corresponded to real quick because couldn't recall, but it's all right. Basically, it was about the behavior of the trademark or registered. So, registered trademark symbol. I'm going to Google it just so I have it handy, which is this little sucker here. Yeah. There. All right. So it was. I think the question was about. Okay. Latest company. Oh, it was like CPA. Okay, this one. Oh, geez, of course. Do you need it? If you want to find it with precision, then yes. We could actually say, see how those change? Now, we are finding results with both versions here. The behavior of Google with symbols like this is a little tricky to know for sure. And also the behavior when you include and exclude things like quotation marks can be weird too. But we're actually seeing here. Oh, another confounding factor is this. You can't see it probably here, but even though you don't see the registered mark after CWPA on this blue line here, it is actually there. A thing to be aware of is that Google not randomly, but quite intentionally truncates and also rewrites titles in real time, but only for purposes of displaying the results. It doesn't actually change them in the index. They're searchable by all the words that actually appear if you go visit the page. But when it shows you a search result, Google just randomly to us, it's not actually random, there's an algorithm for it. But without apparent rhyme or reason to us, Google will just change the way the title is written and show you a completely different title here than what you're actually seeing in their database. So we do have to be aware of that. And what we can actually see here is that the R does appear there. It's just been dropped by Google when it wrote this out for some random reason that we don't know. So it can be weird, but you can try with and without. Anytime you have some odd behavior like this, you can search with and without. The example was just because most of the time people include the R with these because the issuing organization, the body that issues the CFP and CPWA, tells members to include the registered mark symbol. That's just their policy for their certification. So it's common to see it with, but it's not. And as far as whether or not it'll show up either way, probably you're going to find it with or without, because Google kind of automatically conflates with and without in these cases for various technical historical reasons that I'm only a little clear on and would take a while to go into. But suffice to say, when in doubt, test it. And as we can see here, it's not necessary, but it might be sometimes. So try it both ways is the short version of my answer. All right. Cool. All right. I think that's it for now. So thanks so much for coming. Hopefully you found value in both days. And for those of you who only attended one day, hopefully you found value in this day. We look forward to hearing from you during your month of unlimited support. Any questions you have, reach out, let us know. We're happy to help. As I said, I'm sure you'll find a lot of applications for these ideas. And if you run into any trouble or have any need for suggestions of how to implement them, again, that's part of the offering. So please make use of it. That said, I am going to close the recording out now.